You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
I might have a new favorite player, Jared Fernandez for the Ottawa Redblacks, who is just a complete on the field.
Whoa! Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the 2 and Out CFL podcast.
Now they have to kick it out, and they do!
Every week, Travis Currah.
Does anybody still care about this podcast?
And Brazilian Ty.
Punters are people too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Are you kidding? This is unbelievable!
Ready, set, hunt!
And we are a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. I'm Travis Currah, joined by Brazilian Ty, who just woke up. Buddy, I do need to ask you, though, how's Grey Cup Fit Up going?
You know, it's a tough starting time with, you know, my birthday and a couple other birthdays that are real close, and then it always seems to land close to CPCA final weekend, which is just a blatant runaway for 3 days. But Saturday night, I did walk 3 miles home in my boots, and I regretted that decision the minute I walked out the door. My phone was dead. I couldn't get a cab. My Irish goodbye, I was done. It was a full day.
How long did the walk take? Because for somebody that's never been to Lloydminster, it's a city of about, 35,000 people, and you basically walked from the northernmost part to the southernmost part of the city.
Yeah, I could not tell you how long it took. It felt like forever. The only thing that kept me going was knowing I had leftover pizza at home from lunch.
Was the sun up when you got home?
No, but I didn't even know we were going to the Chuck Wagons. We went out for supper, and somebody brought it up. I'm like, oh, are we going to the Wagons tonight? And it was, yeah, I thought we told you. No, I didn't have a hat. I didn't have sunglasses. I didn't have a jacket. It was 12 degrees outside. And so I figured, well, 13 doubles should keep me warm.
That'll warm you up.
And yeah, it really went downhill once Colin Ray was done his set.
Let's try and get into this then.
Join 2 and Out for CFL Fantasy and CFL Pick'em, and show Currah and Ty what you got.
They are who we thought they were.
Just click cflfantasy.tsn.ca
Enough from talking about it. There has to be consequences.
and pick'em.cfl.ca.
All right, the first game of the week was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers beating the BC Lions 32-16, and with that, the Lions, correct me if I'm wrong here, they've lost the season series to basically everyone except Calgary?
More or less.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, I think people saw the season starting slowly for them. Some did think they were going to come out flying and dominate. But with all the changes on the team, I think seeing them struggle out of the gate, at least a little bit, wouldn't have been too surprising. But
No, I mean,
where we are now, I don't know if anybody saw this coming.
I didn't. When you have Mike Riley, just a gamer.
Yep.
The guy has won games on his own in this league without a lot of help, it seems. You kind of expected him to, I don't want to say steal a win, but, I mean, their only win came against Toronto, and it was with a rouge.
Yeah.
And the offense just has looked inept at points, and when they do get going, the defense can't make a stop. It's just one thing after another for this team, and they are in dire straits right now.
Well, the Bombers got off to a quick start here. They'd been struggling with the deep pass, but they connected with Nick Dembski, Chris Matthews deep, so they had things flying early on. But at halftime, it was 12-6 Winnipeg. I mean, when you're at Investors Group Field, or IG Field, and it's so crazy because the initials are the exact same. But the Bombers were undefeated at home. I think trailing 12-6 at halftime, the Lions weren't too upset where they were.
No, I mean, you're down by a score, and on the road, you pretty much have the home team right where you want them. It's really a gambler's dream. When you're close like that, it'd be even better if they were up. But it looked like this game was going to be a slugfest. And that's kind of what we thought coming in. And then in the second half, Winnipeg just made a few minor adjustments they needed to do at halftime and came out and absolutely dominated the second half.
Well, that's the crazy part, because the Winnipeg offense really did nothing in the second half. It was the defense that they woke up. They blocked a punt. Willard Jefferson dropped into coverage and picked Mike Riley off. You remember this happened last year in Regina when Willie picked off Mike Riley when he was in Eskimo. So he seems to do okay against Mike Riley. And then it was like the floodgates opened. There was a moment, I think it was in the fourth quarter, when Jeff Hecht got into the backfield on a blitz untouched. You don't see that very often. At least you shouldn't see that very often, and just had a free shot at Mike Riley. And of course it wasn't dirty or anything, but man, it was a hard shot. A global player, Thadrick Hansen for the Bombers, got into the backfield and sacked Mike Riley. It's been much of the same story as we've seen up to this point in the season.
It is turning into an absolute. It's open season on Mike Riley right now.
Yeah,
and it just does not seem like the O-line can make the adjustments. Nobody knows. I don't want to say nobody knows what they're doing. It's the wrong way to put it, but it just feels like that O-line has not gelled, and with the guys they have on there, I know, and injuries are playing a huge part. But you cannot give up the hits they're giving to Mike Riley. Forget just a sack. Even if he's getting the ball away, he's still taking a licking. And if you can't keep a quarterback upright, and especially when you paid over $700,000 for your quarterback. If he's not healthy, and we've seen it the last couple of weeks where he's getting up, limping, and working through it because he doesn't want to give up, and I get it, but at some point it becomes too much, and they can't afford to have him go on the IR because it's going to be even worse than it is now.
With all the quarterbacks going down, we had another one go down in this one. How is he the one still playing?
I have no idea, Travis.
Like, if you thought one guy would be hurt, it would be Mike Riley, who's just taking a pounding this year. This is reminiscent of his first year in Edmonton. I think it was 2013. When he was at that time. But at that time, he was a lot younger. He was in his 20s. He was probably recovering a little bit quicker. I'm not knocking him for being 34. I think that's what he is now. But when you're 27, 28, it's a little bit easier to take those lickings and get up. It's just the same story as that team in 2013.
Yeah, and you cannot. They've played 9 games. They've given him 36 sacks.
Yeah.
And then you look at the amount of times that he's been knocked down outside of those sacks. It's unbelievable that he's not. Well, I don't want to say that he's not hurt because I'm pretty sure he is. We've seen him limping around and just absolutely gutting out games when he doesn't need to, really. Well, he does because, I don't know if Daniel Bryan is going to fare much better if the O-line can't keep Mike Riley upright. It doesn't bode well for the backup. But the beating it's not going to. He can't do it all year. Right now this team looks like they could maybe win 3 games if they're lucky, and they need Mike Riley to win those games. and if you can't keep him upright, I mean, we said it when he signed this deal that it was going to be hard to put a team in front of him that was going to be, I don't want to say able to compete, but you're spending so much money on that one position. You have to find a way to put bodies around him, and they haven't done a very good job of that this year, and it's evidenced by the 36 sacks. But I mean, the O-line, when week one rolled around, it looked this O-line should be way better just by looking at the names on it, and it just hasn't happened that way. And now they're kind of handcuffed with the amount of money that they are giving Mike Riley, and what the cap is. They could be in a little bit of trouble here for the next couple of years, because the cap isn't going to go up that much significantly to make a huge change in the roster.
The Eskimos lost they won 4 of their last 11 games last year. So Riley goes 4-7 to end the year. Now he's 1-8. It has not been a good little while here. The Lions have 2 more games against the West, and they've lost all 7 so far. So they can basically kiss the playoffs goodbye right now. Deron Carter was playing a lot of cornerback last year. Could he play quarterback this year?
Well, he did toss up. It wasn't the nicest throw I've ever seen.
It worked.
It worked. But, I mean, they're coming up to a point in their schedule. I mean, Hamilton, I mean, they only lost by 1 to this team a week ago. And the way things are going, it doesn't look like it's going to improve. Montreal is hot right now. I mean, and they go back-to-back against Ottawa. Those are maybe the only 2, and then Toronto in a couple more weeks after that. Like, there's not a lot of opportunity left to get wins for this team. And then you end with Edmonton, Saskatchewan, Calgary to end the year. It's going to be a tough go. I think the playoffs are entirely out of the question for this team. And that it's not ideal, but I mean, if that's the case, is it a good idea for Mike Riley to be playing once they're done? Once the playoffs are entirely out of reach, which they pretty much are right now, do you risk getting Mike Riley killed back there? And I don't think, like, it'd have to be a pretty bad injury for him to miss time next year. But I mean, it's that if you're not winning football games, that chance is there, and I don't know if I'd be willing to take it.
So if there's 6 games left in the year and they're out of the playoffs, do they 6-game them?
The way things are going, they might not even need to lie about it.
Well, I don't even think he would. Yeah, that's true. He might be forced onto there if the game keeps up like this. The big storyline in this game, though, was Andrew Harris and him only needing, 60-some yards to become the most productive Canadian of all time. And he did it. He has the most yards from scrimmage that any Canadian has had in CFL history. And it doesn't really sink in until you say it out loud. We're watching one of the best of all time.
100%. And just, it seems year after year, he seems to be getting better. We talked about it on the last show. He just isn't stopping. He's getting better. He's putting up career numbers after career numbers. The 1,000 is still, I mean, it's going to be tough because he didn't have any receiving yards this week, but there is that chance still for that to happen. And like, he's to have the most yards from scrimmage as a Canadian puts him in some pretty elite company, and it kind of, this feat kind of just snuck up on us, right? Like, it wasn't at the start of the year, it wasn't a huge storyline or a huge deal, and then it kind of gets brought up, and it's like, holy crap! And you don't realize just how good this guy is till you look at the numbers. And I don't want to say he's unsung, but he just week in and week out, the effort that he puts forth and the stats he's able to rack up are just amazing.
Yeah, and you know what? He looked good in this game. He didn't. They didn't give him that. He had 14 carries, which at the end of the day, for a guy like Andrew Harris, it's not that much because he wasn't involved in the passing game at all. So if you spent money on him on fantasy, which we like to talk about, it wasn't worth it. $10,000 and 7.3 points. So that's a bit frustrating, but it's really cool to see him get the record. He was emotional. His offensive lineman, Jamarcus Hardrick, was there with him. And I think Harris, he knows that those big guys up front help him out a lot getting those yards.
Well, and this is it's a similar situation to Gretzky when he set the record for career points playing for the Kings against the Oilers. Andrew Harris does it against BC.
Yeah,
sets the record. So it's just one of those things where I'm sure it even adds to the emotional situation because BC gave him that shot, got him his start, and it's just like you said, 14 carries. Not a lot, especially when he's not involved in the passing game, and probably the $10,000 is not worth it on fantasy. But I mean, he can do this, and then next week he could end up putting up 30 points.
Yeah, I love it.
So.
He didn't play university ball. He played junior football for the Vancouver Island Raiders, and Wally Buono noticed him and put him on the practice roster with the Lions, and the rest is history.
Yeah, well, and that just goes to show how much of a genius the Godfather is. Like, you see this guy playing junior football, give him a shot, and turns out to be the best running back, or, well, at least the best Canadian running back that we've seen in the game.
We have to talk about it. Matt Nichols kind of gets tackled from behind and braces himself for the fall, and who knows what the injury is. Today he is going to get an MRI, but he went off the field holding his arm gingerly. I don't know if it's an elbow or a shoulder, but horrible news for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and horrible news for Matt Nichols, a guy who he can't really catch a break. You know, he's had good seasons and good runs before, but he's also had rough injuries. And you know what? He's been healthy lately. You remember in Edmonton, he broke his leg, I think, in a crossover playoff game a number of years ago. But this is the Bombers are on top of the West Division. They won this game, but afterwards it almost felt like a loss. Yeah, it's very deflating when your number one quarterback goes down. And like you said, they didn't announce anything after the game. They were waiting for MRI and everything, so we don't know what it is. But we saw him go down in training camp last year with a non-contact injury, and Strevler come in and was able to win a couple games. Strevler comes into this one, and all they basically do is run. He didn't complete a pass in this game. It's a little disheartening. If you're a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan, I mean, this team was picked by many to come out of the West and win the Grey Cup. And now with QB1 going down and relying on Chris Strevler, which he's won games for them before, but that was with a lot of time playing first team reps, whether it be preseason or during practice and early on in the year. And now he's getting thrusted into that position again. And I'm sure that it won't be that big of an adjustment, but he needs to play way better than what he's shown so far this year. Well, yeah, he threw an interception in this game, and he's going to need to buckle up because they're going to Edmonton, and then they've got the Rough Riders twice, and that Labor Day Classic and Banjo Bowl.
Well, our buddy Neely texted me after after Matt Nichols went down and said, well, congratulations on winning Labor Day, but I guess we can still party.
Yeah, he did. He crushed a Walby burger, though, so that's good.
That's impressive.
Everyone was really high on Chris Strevler, you're right, because he came onto the scene last year, and they lost to the Eskimos that big delayed game in week 1, but it was 33-30. And then they went to Montreal and crushed them 56-10. And then at that point, everybody's like, oh, man, Chris Streveler, he's arrived. He really has arrived. And then he did kind of struggle after that. But I think a lot of fans see a running quarterback and they automatically assume that he's going to dominate the league. Streveler is a young guy. He does have the benefit of having a Nick Dembski, a Andrew Harris, a Lucky Whitehead that can make a lot of things happen in the backfield. And yeah, he can run the ball himself. And Paul LaPolice, with a week of preparation, knowing that Streveler is going to be his guy, I think they're going to be able to move the ball. But the next few weeks could really change what the West Division looks like by the time we're in the middle of September.
It is already so tough.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in the West Division. I mean, what is it? 4 points separates first from fourth right now. Streveler needs to come in and play like he did early on in the year last year when he took over the starting job. In 4 starts, he has 24.6 fantasy points. Other than that, his career average is 9.3. And I mean, a lot of that's coming in mop-up duty or short yardage. But he needs to show what he showed early on. And keep this team where they are, hosting the West Final right now. But if it's a prolonged period of time, I don't know if it's sustainable because he hasn't shown a whole lot this year. And even times last year, there was times it didn't look pretty either. 12 TDs to 8 interceptions in his career, 58.8% completion rating. You need to be better than that if you're going to win consistently in this league. So if he's going to he obviously is going to take over starting duties if Matt Nichols is out, but he needs to play up to the level of a starting quarterback. He can't, because you can't afford to squander away wins as we get into September here in a couple weeks. And we saw it with Calgary. Nick Arbuckle has been keeping Calgary kind of in it as this year goes on without Bo Levi Mitchell. And sure, they've fallen back a bit. But Winnipeg is sitting in an ideal position right now where they have the bye, and Streveler has to keep that going because the less games you have to play to get to the Grey Cup, the better. And if Matt Nichols is out, and let's say he's able to return for playoffs, that bye week could be huge getting him back on the field.
Before Nichols got hurt, I was excited to maybe talk about Chris Matthews, who connected on some deep plays, and they were looking at him deep, and he kind of looked like the receiver that the Bombers wanted him to be when they signed him. I know Kenny the King Lawler, man, he caught one right at the goal line. Another one went off the goalpost. There was a sure touchdown. I was so choked watching that game. But they might have to lean on Andrew Harris even more as Streveler gets going here. As for BC, man, John White looked electric. He had over 5 yards a carry, right around 5 yards a carry. Lamar Durant was back on track, had 108 yards, 15.8 fantasy points. Duron Carter had 9.1, and Brian Burnham had 8.6. Mike Riley, though, 5.3 fantasy points. I can't see a situation anytime soon where I'm going to be relying on him, and that's
no.
It sounds so weird to say considering the last four or 5 years.
Yeah, and last year when he was at $14,000, it was easy to not put him in your lineup just because the money. Now and you never, like you said, it's just so weird to say that you cannot put Mike Riley in your lineup right now. It's like Zach Claros last year for the Riders. You just could not put him in your lineup because you didn't know whether you were going to get 20 points or 3. And right now, Mike Riley is just having a rough go. Just cannot be relied on fantasy-wise. And I don't want to say can't be relied on in the game because the supporting cast he has just hasn't played well around him. And it's leading to just what looks like dismal performance. Like there's another game without a touchdown, throws a pick. 16 of 28 for 177 yards. Like the stat line did not look pretty for Mike. And if he keeps getting hit, it's only going to get worse from here.
The Eskimos go into Toronto, and they get a 15-point win, 41-26. But after watching this game where James Wilder Jr. didn't play, the Argos put up a fight. I think you'll admit that they do not look as bad as they did earlier in the season, and they're not the worst offense in the league anymore. I think that distinction probably goes to Ottawa right now. All of the losses that they have suffered in the offseason and have done nothing to replace them. But the Argos were able to move the ball. The problem with Edmonton at times this season has been penalties, has been being unable to finish drives. They were able to finish the drives in this one, and Toronto was not able to finish drives, but they were still able to kick field goals, and Tyler Krapina was keeping the game close. It only separated at the end of the game when Edmonton scored a touchdown to put it away. So the 15 points is, I think, a little bit more uglier than the game was. Toronto was scrappy until the very end of the game, but Trevor Harris putting up massive numbers back in a city and against a team he used to play for. 420 yards, 3 touchdowns. If you had him on your team, you're laughing. He cost you money, but it was worth every penny.
Added 13 yards on 8 rushing attempts and another 2 rushing touchdowns in it with 42.1 fantasy points.
Wow.
Guess who I had as my starting quarterback this week?
Trevor Harris?
Trevor Harris. Bam.
Now, you could have maybe paired him with Greg Ellingson, and you could have taken Eugene Lewis, and maybe taken a Brandon Burks or a Reggie Bagleton. You didn't take those guys, did you?
I took Tavares Daniels, so he still got me 20
He had
and
a
a
nice
half
game,
points.
too. And he could have had a lot better game.
Yeah. Listening on the radio was a little disappointing at times. And then, I throw S.J. Green on there for 22 yards, 11.2 points. Just all around a good week for me. Took Andrew down a notch from the Eskimo Empire podcast.
But then he goes and runs a half marathon and makes us look bad again.
Yeah, before we even got out of bed.
It's impressive. So well done, buddy.
It's 18 months ago with a broken back to running a half marathon this weekend is something to be in awe of. But I mean, your fantasy performance really took a hit. Maybe you need to pay a little bit more attention to that side.
Tavares Daniels, 5 catches for 155, but that was on 11 targets. The guy could have had 300 yards. Actually, between Ellingson and Daniels, that is a team's offense. Ellingson, 10 catches for 170 and 2 touchdowns. Massive games. But when I pick him, you can count on a cool 2.6 points.
Yeah. Oh, and Ricky Collins comes in, 8 targets, 8 catches, 71 yards and a touchdown for 21.1. It was an absolute offensive outburst. It didn't matter who Trevor Harris was throwing. Greg Ellingson was targeted 14 times.
Yeah.
Ellingson, Collins, and Daniels, if you had any one of those guys, it was a good week. Don't get me wrong, Greg Ellingson at 39 points would have been nice compared to Tavares Daniels 20. I didn't need it. But when a guy's putting up 10 catches, 170 yards, and 2 touchdowns, it's really hard to keep him out of your lineup, but the next week he could be targeted 5 times.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
just, whoever you pick is screwed. So I tend to stay away from those guys because you seem to be an absolute, just a jinx on anybody on this Edmonton Eskimos football team right now.
It just happened to be one of the games where the big 3 receivers all had big games, and you would have been happy with having any of them.
Oh, 100%.
As for Toronto, I'm wondering if Chris Rainey might start to be a guy that you want to get into your lineup a little bit. Mm-hmm. He actually had the most carries, led the team in rushing yards. He had another 2 catches. And, of course, Rainey is doing the returns as well. He's always a danger to break one. He did have a 48-yard kick return. He had the punt return yards as well. So they're starting to use Chris Rainey a little bit more. And even Brandon Burks, he had 5 carries for 43 yards, and he added a 27-yard receiving touchdown. So if you had him in that $2,800 in your lineup, you're happy with the return there. But at the beginning of the year, I kind of wondered if James Wilder Jr. was going to get cut in training camp. It's going to be really interesting to see where he ends up, because the word is that the Argos are shopping him, and he might just end up getting let go. I don't know what they plan on doing there, but it doesn't look like a good situation for James Wilder.
No, and he has underperformed. It's been underwhelming. It started last year. I mean, he had a huge, I guess not huge, but a pretty impressive rookie campaign. Holds out a little bit, trying to get a new deal coming into camp, and it's just he hasn't performed up to expectations. And Brandon Burks and Chris Rainey are doing the job just fine. They're not winning football games right now, but I mean, this team isn't going to win a lot right now until the quarterback situation is figured out. But yeah, it's James Wilder Jr. If guys like Chris Rainey and Brandon Burks are going to perform like this, it's a pretty easy decision if you're Jim Pop to move on from James Wilder Jr.
I actually kind of think the defense let Toronto down a little bit in this one, because
a little bit.
26 points against the Eskimos defense is actually pretty good.
Yeah,
they're not easy to score points against. And McLeod Bethel Thompson, man, he's added the running game to his repertoire. Mm-hmm. It's like teams don't even defend it. They don't expect him to do it. He had a couple 20-yard runs in this one.
Yeah, he goes 19 of 26 for 200 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, 5 carries for 38 yards. Ended up with 19.8 points. Pretty good fantasy output from him. Like, I mean, if you're going to get around 20 points, and he's not what you would call one of the elite quarterbacks in this league, it's a pretty good day. But yeah, teams just not going to defend the run against McLeod Bethel Thompson because it doesn't happen that often. But if he's going to start doing this more, teams are going to have to respect it, and that could open things up in the passing game quite a bit, keeping an extra guy in the box, maybe as a spy or just to kind of keep contain on him. And I mean, I don't want to say that they're disrespecting it, but he's not your typical mobile quarterback. So I don't think it's expected. It's not expected by defenses that McLeod Bethel Thompson be running for first downs.
And you know what? I don't think he's been good enough. He hasn't been bad over the past couple games. I mean, he won a game against Winnipeg. He hasn't been good enough to be anointed the undisputed starter, but he hasn't been bad enough to just yank it off of him and give it to Collaros or give it to Franklin, because I think he's healthy as well.
It's almost like he's the starting quarterback, but it's got an interim tag on it.
Yeah, he's the interim starting quarterback.
Because we're just waiting for the dominoes to fall, and Zach Collaros or James Franklin to come back in and start a football game. I mean, 200 yards, not a great day. The 2 touchdowns help. The rushing helps. But if you're not winning football games, I mean, changes are going to come. Whether that's Zach Collaros starting a game or James Franklin, or whether they decide to do like they did last year and run 2 quarterbacks during a game, I don't know. But it just feels like we're waiting for a decision to be made, because they're not making the decision. It's a hard decision because it just seems no matter what, you're not making the right decision at quarterback because you're not winning football games.
What did you make of Corey Chamberlain using both of his challenges in 5 minutes?
That was stupid.
It just looked like they were desperate to get to the end zone and get off to a fast start. And that's all it was, I think.
And it came up, I believe, in the Hamilton-Ottawa game as well, where if you're going to challenge in the first half, it has to be for points. You can't just throw a challenge for pass interference to move the ball down the field. You have to do it when when it's going to put points on the board. And Corey Chamberlain used up both of his challenges back, and I texted him, like, what is he doing right now? Like, they're pass interference calls, and they got nothing out of them, basically.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was very peculiar, we'll say. And I expect those questionable decisions from the guy on the, well, I guess same sideline, but down the sideline from Corey Chamberlain. I didn't expect it to be Corey to challenge two calls like that.
I like that one. We will get to that Hamilton and Ottawa game. This episode of Two and Out is brought to you by Park Power, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. In Alberta, it's super easy to switch in this province. You get to choose who you buy your energy from. So if you switch retailers, nothing changes about the delivery of electricity or natural gas to your home or business. If you do have a contract, probably good to check out the terms for leaving. But if you don't, then it's even easier to sign up for Park Power. You can go on their website, parkpower.ca. You can plop in what you're paying for your energy now. You'll find out how much you're going to save, and then you can make the switch and support local here in Alberta. The choice is yours, and there's a better deal available to you with Park Power at parkpower.ca.
Speaking of energy costs,
yes.
So remember my power bill with the credit?
Oh yeah.
And so I got my gas bill, and my furnace hasn't been turned on since April. So I haven't been using any gas. Gas bill comes in $248. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? And I look, there's a CR on it. So now I've trained myself to look for that. So I don't have to pay energy. I won't have to pay a bill for like 3 months. I don't know what's going on in my life right now, but it is a complete disaster.
The Ticats beat the Red Blacks 21-7. I was so excited for Simone Lawrence being mic'd up, and it clearly was in his head. Mm-hmm. And he admitted it after halftime. He acted like he was Jason Moss.
And it's same thing going on Hard Knocks right now, where like they follow an NFL team around for training camp, and guys are completely different. They're all rah when the cameras are around, but the coach isn't the rah guy and doesn't say anything when the cameras aren't there. So it changes people, and Simone knowing that he has a mic on is maybe it's definitely going to change the way he goes about certain discussions that he has on the field.
I loved what he said. After halftime, he was like, the police are listening and I'm telling them nothing or something like that.
Yeah. I'm not discussing my day.
Yeah. I might have a new favorite player, Jared Fernandez for the Ottawa Red Blacks, who is just a complete on the field.
Whoa. CRTC is going to be all over us.
Tell me I'm wrong, though.
Oh, you're 100% right.
I'm like, I love this guy.
Yeah, he's the CFL's version of Sean Avery, and I am here for it.
Well, the Ottawa Red Blacks, and this is why I say they have the worst offense in the league, because their defense did everything they could to keep them in this game. And when you hold Brandon Banks to 22 yards, he had 24 yards receiving on 2 catches and -2 when he was carrying the ball.
He wasn't even in the top 5 for Hamilton players fantasy-wise.
It's insane.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous.
And some of it's on him. He had some uncharacteristic drops in this one. But sometimes the game plan, I thought, for Hamilton was a bit weird because, man, they were almost using Braylon Addison as a bit of a hybrid. As a fantasy guy, you want to see this because they gave him 5 carries. He got 16 yards there. He had 8 catches for 100 yards. But Cam Marshall had 12 carries for 92 yards, 7.7 yards a carry. If they gave him the ball 8 more times, he could have had 150 yards. He was dominating Ottawa right now, and I thought they could have given him the ball even more.
100%. The only issue is that they didn't get up big until late in the game. So you're trying to move the ball. I mean, at over 7 yards of carry, there's no reason not to. But you don't want to start grinding the game out when you're up by 4. It makes it real tough to keep guys fresh and healthy. Maybe Cameron Marshall's wheelhouse right now is that 12 to 15 carries. Maybe that's where he's the most effective. I don't know. But like I said, Braylon Addison, 8 of 10 for 100 yards, 19.6 points. He was Hamilton's number 1 guy when it comes to fantasy. Cameron Marshall, the number 4 at 10.8. But yeah, if he were to run the ball like 20 more or 8 more times to get up to 20 carries, who knows what this number would have been at? We probably would have added a touchdown and it had an absolutely dominating performance. Not that he wasn't already at 12 for 92. Is just you don't see those numbers very often.
No, they got Luke Tasker involved in this one. 6 catches for 83 yards.
And I just watched the 4 Falls of Buffalo like the night before. So it was perfect. Did you know that Steve Tasker's his dad?
No.
'Cause that was news to me.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
wow,
breaking news, eh?
Jalen Ackland even had a touchdown in this one. 3 catches, 46 yards. As for Ottawa,
hey, this is exactly what the fans wanted.
Dominic Davis.
I am not letting this go.
No, you're not. You're going to hang on to this.
This is the hill I am going to die on.
Dom Davis, 20 of 40. Why not give the ball to Madhu more? Why sit John Crockett? You know what? I don't want to wish that a guy's hurt, but I hope he's hurt because why would he not play in this game?
100%. He has been a ray of sunshine for this team, it seems. When he gets in, he's producing. And, to leave him off the roster, I'm hoping that there is a reason other than they just scratched him to get Madhu more time. I don't know. But if he's hurt, then the decision is definitely defendable. But right now, it doesn't make any sense.
Dom Rhymes, 13 targets. Only 5 catches and 73 yards. A lot of it is on his quarterback.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, the options are pretty slim in Ottawa, whether it's Dominic Davis or Jonathan Jennings throwing the ball right now. Nothing seems to be going right. Caleb Hawley goes 5 of 7 for 83 yards. He was the leading point getter at 13.3. Dominic Rhymes still able to put up 12.3, but 13 targets. I mean, it's not all on him. 8 incompletions when you throw the ball his way. Not all ideal or optimal catch opportunities, but you do have to help out your quarterback a little bit. So, I mean, it is a little bit on him, but Dominic Davis is not is setting this team up for success right now, whether it's through the air or he only had four rushes for 14 yards, and we expected a little bit more of that, I think, from Dom Davis coming into the year, thinking he was a little more mobile. It's just nothing's going right, but apparently he's a better option than Trevor Harris, so, I mean, they got that going for them.
I don't know how he did what he did against Saskatchewan in Week 2.
Man. Everybody gets one. That's the only way I could think that's the only thing that it could possibly be is just that's the outlier.
Yeah, I will say about this game, while it was a low-scoring game, there wasn't a touchdown. What was it, 4-1 at halftime or something like that? it was
1-1 at one point.
Yeah, it wasn't hard to watch because the defenses were actually making plays, and they were hitting hard.
Yep.
So, I mean, the offenses were in a tough spot. And for Hamilton...
And Chiaffi kind of got screwed.
Okay, we'll get to that. Hamilton is going to be in tough. Big Teddy Laurent leaves the game, and Adrian Tracy got hurt as well. So, and we heard that Westerman is not going to be able to play this year on the D-line either. So there's a little bit of chinks in the armor on the Ticat defensive line. But, another big storyline in this game was those challenges as well.
Mm-hmm. The reffing this weekend was suboptimal. I think I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, it was a couple interesting calls in this one, a couple interesting reviews. Like Rick Campbell, he said it on the live mic. He just threw the flag with a hope and a prayer and was surprised.
Yeah, which says a lot.
But Lewis Ward, his streak comes to an end at 69 consecutive field goals.
You will never, I tweeted this out, but you will never convince me that he didn't miss that on purpose.
With all the 50-yarders he's made and he misses a 31-yarder?
Yeah. I mean, look at the number he was at. Like, I would have missed that on purpose.
If you want to believe in one conspiracy theory in the league this year, this is the one to believe.
Because it's hilarious.
But the record was Adam Vinatieri at 44 consecutive field goals, and he beats it by 25.
Yeah. There's a long way to go for guys to catch this record, and I don't know. I didn't think it was even 44 was even going to be possible.
Right.
And he has shown us that. He only missed one kick last year. This could be the one he misses this year. He might only miss one a year for his career.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So that's what I'm banking on.
Let's go to the last game of the week. And I think we could do an entire podcast on this one.
How does Don Jackson not go into concussion protocol before kickoff?
Oh, my God. Okay, Montreal beats Calgary 40-34 in overtime.
Double overtime.
Oh, yes. And I heard them slamming Don Jackson for getting in a fight without his helmet. But what about the guys punching a guy without a helmet while wearing one? What does that say about him?
I'm okay with it.
Oh. No. If you're going to be throwing a punch while you're wearing the armor, I think that says a lot about you, man.
Emotions took over and he threw a punch. I mean, I'm surprised that guys weren't kicked out of the game before the game even started.
Yeah, I think when guys that aren't playing are fighting, that's pretty lowbrow too.
The issue I had, and it's the same issue that I believe Matt Dunnigan had, was the guys in cities, why are they out there?
Absolutely.
Because that's how this whole thing started. And there's no reason for them to even be out there. Was it McManus? And
yep.
Was it Tommy Campbell?
Yep.
And that's what started at half, or at midfield. I think, I don't want to say a rule change is going to come, but I think that the league office and the Worm are going to be looking a little more closely at warm-ups now and just making sure that teams are going, I don't know if it's going to be, you have to stay inside your 45-yard line and leave that neutral zone, and it's only going to be coaches because this is not a good look. It's fun. Don't get me wrong.
I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah, it was unreal, but you can't have guys throwing punches before the game. It's just not a good look. When we have the whole head injury, brain trauma, CTE thing going on behind the scenes.
The Patrick Levels, Ciante Evans, Tommy Campbell factor was basically hyped going into this one, and the fireworks started before the game, and it did carry over into the first half when, man, I was starting to think if the refs are going to lose control of this one, and I think they did a good job of reining him in, because in the second half, both teams just got back to business and started playing football.
Oh, 100%. It kind of calmed down. They got into the flow of the game, and there was little spurts here and there where, Don Jackson would lower his head and try to.
He's always been like that.
trying to truck a guy, and then but the guy would get the better of him, and they'd kind of stand up and get face to face, and there was a little bit of that. It never really exceeded that point after everything that happened pregame. So it was kind of like, it felt like a playoff hockey game where there's always a scrum after the whistle.
Yeah, exactly.
And it takes 4.5 hours to play. But guys played this on both sides, played this game pissed off, and it made it so much fun to watch.
Nick Arbuckle, 31 of 36 for 370 and 4 touchdowns. You can't really fault what the Calgary Stampeders did on offense here. They did a lot. Reggie Bagleton was an absolute monster. 8 catches, 173 yards, 4 touchdowns. That has to be the highest score of the week.
It definitely is, yes. 49.3 points. Far and away.
Like, if you started Trevor Harris, Reggie Bagleton, and let's say Greg Ellingson and nobody else, you would have had a nice 120 points, and you would have been happy with what you did.
Greg Ellingson put up 39 points, and it looked like this is going to be far and away.
Yeah.
Far and away the high score, and Reggie Bagleton comes out on Saturday and beats it by 10.3.
And they are really... They're just get the ball in his hands and let him do what he does. Sometimes they do hit him deep in stride, and he just finishes the play. Like there were a couple times in Montreal just left him all alone. But they have Reggie coming out of the backfield with the ball, running screens with him. They do everything with him, and he just makes it happen. There was no other Stampeder receiver that had over 50 yards. So
no, it was really a one-man show for the Calgary offense.
Don Jackson is back, and I think this is what we expected from him to start the year. He had to leave the game a little bit, but 13 carries, 77 yards, and he also had 6 catches for 28 yards as well. If he adds a touchdown in there, you're really happy with what you get on the fantasy side of things. But for Montreal, 50 pass attempts for Vernon Adams Jr. He throws 2 interceptions, which does need to be cleaned up. If that doesn't happen, the Owls, maybe they win this game in regulation, but they really didn't do anything till about a minute 15 left. He did throw 2 touchdowns, and Jeremiah Johnson had a 100-yard game as well. So they have depth at running back, and Vernon Adams, he just... It has changed this team when they finally gave him the starting job. I know it's because of Pipkin getting hurt. And you know what? He admitted it in one of those interviews they showed during the game where he thought he was going to come to the CFL, dominate, and just go right back down south. And he put the time in. He learned from some really good starting quarterbacks, Kevin Glenn being one of them, who, by the way, was called by Winnipeg, and he already did shut them down. He's not coming out of retirement. But Vernon Adams, he's got to be on track to maybe be the East Division's MOP. I
don't know who else right now in the East unless Brandon Banks goes absolutely insane in the second half of this season. Oh, it's 100% possible. But yeah, right now, Vernon Adams Jr. is almost turning into a must-start when it comes to fantasy. And, it was a little tough to pick him. You look at Calgary, they got Trey Roberson.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, man, I don't know if he's going to be able to put up the numbers. He just, comes out with a 35.4-point performance. And
the 2 rushing touchdowns, too.
The 2 rushing touchdowns are huge. But, I mean, it just looked like he couldn't be stopped when late in the game anyways.
Eugene Lewis had a massive game, 10 catches, 114 yards, and a touchdown. And that catch that he made on Trey Roberson on the 2-point conversion was unbelievable. And Devere Posey has his biggest game as a Montreal Alouette since coming last year. 10 catches, 181 yards. He didn't have a touchdown, but he had a long, beautiful 58-yarder that Vernon Adams hit him in stride for.
Yep.
And he's still relatively cheap. If he stays healthy, and it seems like they finally got him involved in this offense with no B.J. Cunningham, he could bring some returns as soon as next week against Toronto.
Oh, for sure. And like when B.J. went down, that's a big hole to fill based on the fact that he can stretch the field. And now, Devere Posey healthy. Eugene Lewis comes in with 16 targets, 10 catches, touchdown, a 2-point convert for 29.4. The receivers in this game this week, they showed that, sure, BJ goes down, but the depth is there at the position for Montreal right now. And if these guys that are, other than BJ Cunningham being out, if these guys stay healthy, Vernon Adams Jr. could keep putting up numbers like this quite easily.
Jake Winicky is even, I think, underrated. 5 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Yeah, I don't know if enough can be said about Kahari Jones, because if this is Mike Sherman's team, they are not in this position.
Oh, God, no.
There is not even a chance that happens. They love Kahari Jones, and they even said it on the broadcast that Farhan said it, that Kahari, while he was the guy in BC, sometimes Wally would come and change the game plan a little bit. He's able to... He's got a lot on his plate right now. He's almost like the Chris Jones of Montreal right now. They're completely different guys, so don't get your hair up in your arms over that one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do not speak ill of Kahari Jones like that.
His post-game speeches.
How dare you?
The guys just want to play for him. This is a fun team.
They are, appointment television right now for CFL fans. They're so fun to watch. It seems Vernon Adams puts on a show week in and week out. The receivers are there. Jeremiah Johnson, or when William Stanback's healthy, they can do a lot of damage out of the backfield. They're sitting in second place right now. I mean, Hamilton has a little bit of a cushion on first. So, I mean, I think they're playing for second to host that East Semi, which... When I said this during the Stanley Cup Finals to you, you called me crazy because Mike Sherman still had a job. But the personnel that they have put together on the defensive side of the ball, and now they have a bona fide starter in Vernon Adams Jr., as he's proven. The receivers are there. That defense right now, I know they gave up 34 points in this one, but the guys that are there, these are guys that have proven in this league that they can play. This team right now is just, they're firing on all cylinders. And, I mean, to go into Calgary and win right now, I know it's Nick Arbuckle. I know it's Nick Arbuckle and not Levi Mitchell. But that team is still the Calgary Stampeders, and they're still the mountain you got to get over in this league. Like, I mean, they are defending Grey Cup champions. To be the man, you got to beat the man. And Montreal walked into Calgary. Granted, it took them till 58 minutes into the game to decide that they were going to win this one. But they come out of there with a W, and it's huge if you're the Montreal Alouettes.
I know it wasn't Bo Mitchell, but what else could have Arbuckle done? He had the perfect passer efficiency. He
only threw 5 incompletions.
Yeah, he did absolutely everything in his power to win this game. What lost this game for Calgary was penalties. 13 for 141. They
doing their best Eskimos impression.
Yep, they helped Montreal drive down the field those last 2 possessions to score 11 points in the last 80 seconds of the game with roughing the passers.
That one where Vernon Adams was tapping the back of his head after after a play, and I can't remember who, somebody was hurt. I can't remember who it was. He was down on the field, and Vernon Adams was basically yelling at Kim Murphy about this. 10 minutes later, they announced a penalty, and there was no flag, and
no announcement.
Dustin Nielsen even said it on the broadcast that call did not come from the command center, they were told. That was Kim Murphy making that call. So I have no idea what the hell happened on that play. It was right in front of him. Didn't throw the flag and took that long to announce a penalty. That seems a little fishy.
That was kind of bizarre. And
yeah,
I guess if there's another conspiracy theory you want to believe, this team is owned by the Canadian Football League.
Oh, boy.
We should do a CFL Conspiracies podcast.
At some point I have to go back to work.
It would be our biggest podcast ever. I guarantee it.
We'd have to do like a round table, though.
Yeah, I agree. Get the tinfoil hats out. Let's talk about this. But you know what? I really loved.
Who's spying on you, Bart? Who else? Major League Baseball.
You know what I really loved about that Alouettes' last touchdown drive to put them down by 5 before the 2-point conversion.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Hashtag math.
They used the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. They had no fear. And to me, that showed to me that Vernon Adams has learned the Canadian game. Mike Sherman would have not called plays like that. But
Mike Sherman probably would have kept running the ball.
Kahari Jones knows how the clock works. They were using the middle of the field. You're not going to see that working in the NFL. That drive does not work there. They didn't use the sidelines at all and just rocketed down the field and put the ball in the end zone. And that was one of the only in the CFL drives you will see with, a minute 15 left. It was awesome.
Like just the cojones on Vernon Adams Jr. and Kahari Jones to make those play calls and execute it like that. It was amazing.
And recovering that onside kick, I memean, this game was something else.
Eugene Lewis was everywhere.
Yeah, he was. That overtime, and another thing I'll say about overtime is a lot of times the teams feel the pressure and they won't rush the ball. But they did here. There's no play clock. Just do what you do. Calgary had success running the ball. So did Montreal in that overtime, but it has to be talked about.
Okay, so there is a play clock. There's no game clock.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. There's no game clock.
But another delay of game on a kickoff. That's 2 this year now on that onside kick. I thought that was the game.
And I know, I'm like, over. Here we go. They're not going to recover from this. And Suter said that one was a bad call.
I'm not sure what happened there.
I didn't know what was going on there. Eric Rogers. I thought it was a catch.
His right foot comes down out of bounds before the left foot drags.
So was his left foot like
it was up in the air.
Millimeter?
It was off the turf. You can see it when they showed the replay. It would be
because the pebbles don't fly until his right foot is out of bounds.
It would be from his left, looking like so from Eric Rogers' left because he's like running downfield. The one angle shows his foot is his toe is on the ground, and then it lifts. He makes the catch, and then you see his foot hit again. Like you can see a distinct motion, and it's not much. Like it's maybe an inch, but that left foot or that right foot comes down first out of bounds. So I totally agree with the call, but it's super close.
That was unbelievable. I mean, there was some conspiracy in this game, but that's probably now the game of the year. Does that top the Calgary BC one?
Ooh, I think so. Just because Calgary lost.
It was a fun week 10. Who are the top fantasy performers? I think we've talked about them all, but
basically, yeah. Trevor Harris 42.1. Vernon Adams Jr., 35.4. Nick Arbuckle, 31.6. So, I mean, 2 of the top 3 are in the same game. So they were just throwing the lights out, really.
Yeah.
Running backs, Jeremiah Johnson at 16.9, Don Jackson 16.5. So again, same game. John White came in at 13.1. Wide receivers, it's kind of crazy this week. Reggie Bagleton 49.3, Greg Ellison 39, Eugene Lewis 29.4, DeVere Posey 28.1, and Ricky Collins Jr. 21.1. He had 3 guys in the top 5 for wide receivers in the same game. And then two Eskimo receivers. Like this week, there were some gaudy numbers put up, and it was lots of fun to watch. The reffing needed, that left a little something to be desired, but all these games, I mean, yeah, Edmonton won by 15, but it was a lot closer than that in every other game. There were some really good games and one game where Winnipeg kind of pulled away and you kind of didn't expect much from BC, but really fun week in the CFL for sure. Yeah,
and 2 of those receivers working on that Calgary secondary. That's
there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys from the Montreal Calgary game in the top 10.
That's awesome
for fantasy points this week.
Oh, it was a fun week. Now breathe deeply because week 11 is going to get cranked up, and then we have Labor Day, baby.
Oh, yeah.
We are a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Check out albertapodcastnetwork.com to see all of the great shows. How about the epic podcast, Emergency Preparedness in Canada? It is hosted by Dr. Josh Bezanson and Grayson Cockett. It's an educational podcast aimed at emergency managers of all levels. So the last podcast, they were talking about 72-hour kits. You need to get out of there. They have a debate about that. And beating the heat, understanding some heat emergencies. It's been crazy in the East Coast when it comes to heat. Not so much in Alberta.
Yeah, when is summer supposed to start?
Hey, I am not going to complain about it.
No,
at
God,
all.
no.
Actually,
it's 25. It's 25 in my condo right now because it's not very humid. It's cool enough outside. It's comfortable.
Actually, the hottest football game I've ever been to, I think, was in September. So,
oh man.
I remember I took my dad to his first game at Taylor Field. We sat on the east side. It was against the BC Lions. We cooked in the sun.
Baked.
And the Riders lost 38-3.
Totally worth it then.
Yeah, totally worth the 12-hour drive. Also, if you need games or tickets for anything, SeatGiant.ca. Actually, my brother just went to SeatGiant.ca, bought a pair of tickets to the Labor Day Classic in Regina, so he'll be joining us there as well. He went to SeatGiant.
Oh, dear God.
SeatGiant.ca. Use the promo code APN. You're going to save 5% and support the Alberta Podcast Network in the process. Winnipeg, Edmonton, Friday Night Football. That is going to be a big one. You got tickets there at SeatGiant.ca. We got wrestling coming to Alberta next month. Head to the website, Canadian dollars, Canadian owned and operated. Save money and support the Alberta Podcast Network in the process. We will be back to talk Week 11 on Thursday morning. There's no more Thursday Night Football, Ty. Right away, the weather's going to get colder, and we're going to be in Calgary in no time.
And absolutely hating my decision to, be entirely hungover for the entirety of Grey Cup week again, I'm sure.
We were both winners in the Canadian Football Podcast Network Fantasy Challenge with Ty beating Empire Andrew. I beat Brian from BC Lions Den, luckily by like 6 points. It was another close one. Rate, review, subscribe on any podcatcher there is, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.